Good morning. This is Holy Saturday. This is Holy Saturday, that Saturday between Good Friday and Easter Sunday. And I'm here, I guess, with a bonus cup of coffee. Hope you're doing well on this rainy Holy Saturday. Came across something a few days ago that really piqued my interest, and I thought it'd be worth spending a few minutes with you on this Holy Saturday. And it's this, that it is, easily possible to pin down precisely when the events of Jesus' crucifixion took place. The gospel writers give us a lot of clues, and and if you pair those with what we know about Jewish culture, Jewish practice at the time, and the events and the fact that Jesus was crucified, that's widely attested in secular extra-biblical historical sources as well. So let's do that. Let's pin down exactly when he was crucified. And to be sure, this is not something that one can be dogmatic about, but it's more than just academic interest. Our faith is anchored in real events. Our faith is anchored in real events that took place at a real time. God took human form. God became a man for us at a real time in a real place. Our faith is not about once upon a time. It's not in a galaxy. It's not long, long ago in a galaxy far away. So let's play with this a little bit. When was Jesus crucified? And so to begin with, the very basics. So we know that Jesus was crucified when Caiaphas was the high priest and when Pontius Pilate was the governor of Judea. And that gives us a time frame of several years. Caiaphas was the high priest from 18 to 36 AD. Pontius Pilate was the governor in Judea from 26 to 36. So that gives us a 10-year window in which the events of Jesus' passion could have taken place. We can be a little more precise than that, though. Luke tells us that John the Baptist began his ministry in the 15th year of the Emperor Tiberius. Augustus Caesar, the first real emperor of Rome, died in 14 AD and was succeeded by Tiberius. And so in the 15th year of Tiberius, that would take us to around 29 AD for the beginning of John the Baptist's ministry. And we know that Jesus began his public ministry not long after John began his. We are not given an exact time frame, but it was presumably not too long after that. We know that Jesus was crucified on a Friday that also coincided with the Passover. The Passover, of course, takes us back to the Exodus. It's the feast that God told Moses to institute back in Exodus 12. On the beginning of the Passover, on that night, they were to roast a lamb, have their Passover meal, and then they're heading out of town. They're going to depart and leave Egypt. And that was a feast that they were supposed to keep in perpetuity. And so at the time of Christ, he and his disciples, being observant Jews, they did observe a Passover meal. John records Jesus going to Jerusalem for 3 different Passovers. The Jews today observe the Passover. So he is crucified, coinciding with the Passover, between, say, 29 and 36 AD. And that begins to narrow things down quite a bit for us. We know that he's crucified on a Friday, which narrows things down even more. He's crucified on a Friday, and all the gospel writers agree on this. It was important for them to have the bodies off the cross before the beginning of the Sabbath. The Sabbath, for our Jewish friends, is Saturday. And as they reckon time, it begins on sundown Friday and goes through sundown Saturday. And so a Friday in that 10-year time frame, that is around when the Sabbath is. And so what do we end up with? We end up with a couple of different dates. April 7th of 30 AD or April 3rd of 33 AD. Of those two, April 3rd, 33 AD is more likely, because that allows time for Jesus to have his public ministry, which apparently was something around 3 years. So there we have it. April 3rd, 33 AD, the most likely date on which Jesus was crucified. A couple of other interesting points. The Synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, describe the Last Supper as being the Passover meal. John, in his Gospel, describes Jesus being crucified on the Passover, which puts things off by a day. And that is something that is a wrinkle that, if you're really attuned to the Gospels, it sticks out at you. What's going on with that? So one possible explanation, which I think makes a lot of sense, is this. Jesus knows what's going to be coming on that Passover. He knows what's going to be coming on that Passover, and so he just tells his disciples, we're going to observe it a day early. We already know that he's going to take some liberties with the Passover meal, in that he reinterprets the Passover meal in light of his own death and resurrection. We know that he adds a foot washing to the Passover meal, as John describes. And who among us hasn't agreed, well, we're going to have our Christmas dinner on December 26th rather than the 25th, because it's what works best for various people's calendars. So Jesus, by this reckoning, observed a Passover meal, say a day early on Thursday night. Friday, Passover begins that evening. And that Friday is when families would have killed their lambs and prepared the Passover meal. and Saturday is the Sabbath. That's probably how it worked out, though we can't be absolutely certain. We are told that he was crucified at the 3rd hour, and at the 9th hour he was already dead. At the time Jews reckoned time, essentially hours after sunrise. So around 9 o'clock, he was crucified. And at 3 o'clock, they went to the crosses. And at that point, Jesus was already dead. And they wanted to have the bodies of Jesus and the 2 criminals off the crosses before the Sabbath began at sundown. So, most likely, April 3rd, AD 33, crucified 9 in the morning, and was dead by 3 in the afternoon. And it's something that a history geek like me would find curious, but it's more than a curiosity. It is a reminder that, like I said, our faith is anchored in real time, in real events. That at a real time, at a real place with real people, God became a human. God became a man and walked among us to save us. And this next Wednesday, when I'm back out here, I'll reflect more on what it is that happened, and perhaps a bit more on Holy Saturday. So, with that, have a great rest of your day. And yesterday was Friday. Today is Saturday. And the great good news is that Sunday's coming.